Hello, TandLers, and welcome back to TandL Talks, the podcast for, about, and featuring fabulous educators. I'm your host, Nancy, and I am so excited about this episode. Before we jump into today's conversation, I want to offer a quick update, and it's a good one. Since this episode was originally recorded, I'm excited to share that the school board has officially approved the adoption of InquirEd's Inquiry Journeys for 4th and 5th grade. We'll be moving forward with implementation next year. Now, if you're wondering about social studies curriculum for K-3 students, here's an important piece of the story. Through extensive work over the last several years, our social studies cadre has determined that K-3 social studies standards can be effectively addressed through existing curriculum, specifically CKLA, Character Strong, and John McCoy lúḻilas since Time Immemorial. Because of that determination, our adoption focus centered intentionally on 4th and 5th grade, where a dedicated standards-aligned social studies curriculum was needed. This adoption is the result of years of thoughtful teacher-led work by our social studies adoption team and cadre. Teachers rolled up their sleeves, studied standards, piloted curriculum in real classrooms, listened closely to student feedback, and grounded every decision in equity, inquiry, and alignment with JML-STI. And I have to pause right here to give flowers to our own Crystal Widman. Crystal is our elementary social studies instructional coach. She has been the steady hand, the visionary, and frankly, the glue holding this work together. Her leadership with the cadre has been intentional, collaborative, and deeply respectful of teacher expertise. Crystal has balanced big picture vision with day-to-day classroom reality, always centering what's best for students. This adoption absolutely bears her fingerprints and her heart. In today's episode, you're going to hear from Alyssa and Lisa, two of the teacher leaders who served on the social studies cadre and piloted inquiry journeys in their classrooms. At the time of recording, the adoption had not yet been finalized, but listening back, it's clear why this work matters. The role of teacher leadership, the power of inquiry-based learning, and the importance of amplifying student voice in curriculum decisions. So as you listen, know that this conversation represents both the process that led us here and the vision we're now moving forward with. Let's get started. Hello, TandLers. I am here today with two of our teacher leaders who sit on the social studies cadre. They are also piloting a new social studies curriculum for 4th and 5th grade. So can you please introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Lisa Williams, and I teach 4th grade at Fir Grove.
Alyssa LaBrush, I teach 5th grade at Zeiger.
Great. Thanks for being here after a long day. I know you've been working all day with the cadre, so I appreciate your time. I always like to start these conversations by asking people to tell me about a teacher who had a big influence on you. Who had an impact on you?
I grew up in the Puyallup School District, and I went to Maplewood, and I just had so many wonderful teachers at Maplewood. I had Miss Spanny in 4th grade and Miss Valentine in 5th grade and Miss Simpson 3rd grade. I remember all of them because they were just all so wonderful, so kind, so dedicated to their work, and they just loved teaching, and you could see that from them. And so they all just had a wonderful impact. And then I also went to Puyallup High School, and her name was Mrs. Scott when I was there. I think Miss Mueller now taught my teaching academy classes, which really propelled me into starting my teaching career. So lots of great teachers in the Puyallup School District that were impactful.
Great. Thank you.
I also have really great experiences with Puyallup School District teachers. I growing up, I don't remember a specific teacher that stood out to me, but definitely as I was volunteering in my own children's classrooms, I came into teaching a little bit later in life, and I saw just great connections being made by different teachers. A couple that come to mind specifically, Wendy Owens. She works at Fruitland, and just the way that she connects with kids. She teaches first grade. She's just magical to watch the way that she helps kids to bridge gaps. And that really inspired me to go back to school and think about teaching as a career. And then later on, I had the opportunity to work with Terry Cranston, who's since retired. She's the same thing, really great relationships with kids. And she taught fourth grade. And that was where I kind of said fourth grade looks like a fun place to teach. So
there you are.
there I am.
I love hearing these stories because it's just that reminder that what we do as teachers really, really matters. It matters to kids, it matters to grown-ups, and we carry that with us forever and ever. I just think it's so powerful, the work that teachers do. So thanks for sharing your stories. So let's talk a little bit about the cadre and the adoption. What made you say yes to serving on the district social studies cadre this year?
This is my 3rd year serving on the cadre, and the last 2 years we kind of looked at the curriculum that we have, which we call the Big Orange Book often in 5th grade, and how did it really hit the standards, but also was it an inclusive curriculum? And so this year we've kind of taken the work, and being on the pilot team, we've got to look at a different curriculum and see how it's much different, much newer, much more engaging to the students. And so just taking that work that we started a few years ago and extending it.
I got onto the cadres my 2nd year by kind of looking at the materials that we had. Similar to Alyssa, we have not an orange book, but a blue book in 4th grade. And looking through the STI, the old binder that we had,
Right.
and trying to teach it and saying, oh my, because growing up, social studies, history was one of my favorite subjects in school. I feel like it's a great entry point for multiple kids to come in and be able to access things. Like if you're not a great reader or you're not a great mathematician, you could discover joy of learning in social studies and history. I worked on adapting some of those archaic materials
Yes, you did.
into some things that were more engaging for students. And that was really how I got invited into the cadre and got asked to, kind of extend that work, which has been great to get to have a voice in how we're teaching social studies.
You did a ton of work on the STI as we were starting to really dig into that work. We used the stuff you had prepared for 4th grade and used your thoughts as well as we've developed other grade levels. So thank you for all the work that you did putting that together.
Of course. It was a great learning experience, actually. You look at curriculum and you think it can't be that hard to design lessons, and then you go, oh, it's actually pretty difficult,
Right?
and then go back and revise and go back and revise. And that's, kind of the joy in it is let's go back and fix this.
Yes.
Make it work better for kids.
Oh. So our social studies cadre has done extensive work over the past 2 years and then this year. And the cadre determined, as we were looking at curriculum adoption, that K-3 social studies standards could easily be met through current curriculum like JML-STI, Character Strong, CKLA. But that wasn't the case for 4th and 5th grade. What made it so important for us to find dedicated social studies curriculum for those grades?
Well, there's a couple different components. First of all, 4th and 5th grade are upper elementary. Students are building a platform that they're going to have going forward into junior high and high school. And the feedback we're getting from junior high and high school teachers are kids don't have the background knowledge needed for those more, in-depth courses. So we definitely wanted to make sure we were hitting that. Additionally, I think, Alyssa talked about the Big Orange Book and the Big Blue Book. Those materials are pretty outdated and not very culturally sensitive. So looking at how to update those is pretty important.
I think too, the previous curriculums being older, aligned to old standards. And
Correct.
we looked through the old curriculum and we said, oh, this standard could align here and it could align there. It was like a stretch. It wasn't perfectly fitting puzzle piece. And so the newer curriculum allows those standards to actually be aligned, and you feel like, okay, I am teaching this to the best of my abilities, and I know the students are going to be prepared to learn about this content because it aligns correctly, rather than like, I guess this fits here and I guess it fits there. So it's just a more nicely aligned to the standards piece as well with the new curriculum, and knowing that there's more diversity and inclusion and more inquiry for the students. So not just sit and get, but it's really pushing them to learn more.
I feel like our older curriculum is more reading comprehension, right?
Oh, yeah,
And this is more active intellectual engagement.
definitely. I definitely, as I was planning when to teach each unit, I would look at our CKLA and how heavy is the CKLA reading for this for this month? And can I do some social studies in this month, or are they going to look at that book and just want to throw it across the room?
Right.
Because they're like, we've already read so much today. Now we have to read this whole chapter, So getting to pilot this curriculum has been really great because it's not as heavy for the students. It's more engaging, more collaborative activities and discussions. And that's been really nice to see as we're looking to update and, really engage them. Kids are learning different ways. We've got to meet them where they are.
So walk me through what the pilot process has looked like in terms of the work that you've done here with the team, but then also the work in your classrooms. What does the process look like?
I think Crystal and the curriculum instructors explained that with this new curriculum, your end goal is to have a student-created project, not just a multiple choice test. So for myself, knowing I'm going to work backwards in that sense of, I want to get to this point. How am I going to help my students be successful in that, with the backwards planning in the sense? And then looking at the curriculum, just fully in depth and being prepared. So I feel confident when I teach it, and then having the materials prepared as well, because a lot of it was accessed on a digital platform. So just always, trying to be prepared and talking to other teachers about what are they doing. I appreciated every little meeting that we got to have to hear how others were adjusting or how others were implementing the new piloted curriculum. Having Crystal come and observe and give feedback was also very helpful. Trying to just be open and adjust where you need to adjust and be flexible to really get to that final piece.
I think my first thought was fourth grade is very focused on Washington State and learning about the state that we live in. So the unit that we chose to pilot was economics, which was a little overwhelming to think about. I'm going to explain the economy to 9-year-olds. What are they going to think? Are they really going to care about this? Because, I'm just thinking as an adult, how much do I really care about the economy? So it was interesting to see how easy the curriculum was to use. That was probably the first thing I noticed. Was within the digital platform that Alyssa talked about, there are prep and planning. You just click it and it tells you, hey, here's the prep for this unit. Or if you're in the lesson view, here's the prep for this lesson. I thought, wow, this is really easy for me, but how easy is it going to be for our kids? How are they going to access this, kind of complex topic? And I was pleasantly surprised at how well they really accessed it. Like, they were so engaged right away. One day we had a huge debate about taxes. And I thought, you guys really do pay taxes? But they do,
Right.
because every time they buy a video game, they've got to add a little bit on for tax. Getting them to, or watching them discover, because it's an inquiry model. So watching them discover, here are the things that go into me, like, what do I get from these taxes that I pay? Was pretty cool to see, like, the debate that they held, and just sitting back and not facilitating the conversation, just letting them have that discussion was unique experience with my group this year. I was really pleasantly surprised to see how engaged they were.
That is such a sophisticated conversation that they were having, right?
It really was.
That you don't expect from little kids. But similar to what we found out when we adopted CKLA, kids can absorb really hard content and they can understand how that applies to them. And so that's just exciting.
It was really exciting.
What does student engagement look like? You talked about the discussion. What other kinds of things are they doing?
There was a lot of great activities for fifth graders. We went over rights and responsibilities, and what I appreciate about this piloted curriculum is that there was usually some kind of like warm up for them to do to, I think they call it a spark, to spark their interest in the topic. One day was just kind of like a sorting activity, like literally taking cards and just sorting them. One day there was an activity of like taking the Constitution and putting it into modern language and matching like the Constitution's previous, like old language to modern language. And so the matching piece, there's been concentric circles where the students have to engage in a conversation with their peers, reflecting on their pieces. There has been jigsaw activities where each group has to read a short passage and then share their learning to the rest of the class to help them feel responsible. There's been times where they've got to draw their thinking. There has been just so many ways to represent their thinking in this unit and through this curriculum, which is just so nice, rather than answer questions, multiple choice, answer questions, multiple choice. It's just more engaging, which I greatly appreciate.
Yeah, I would mirror what Alyssa said. We had an activity where kids were learning about buyers and sellers and resources, and they had a simulation and they were, you're a barber and you're a cook and they got to choose their role. They were really excited about that. And then they all interacted with each other the way that we would in the real world. If I need a haircut, I'm going to go to the barber and I'm going to give him some of my capital. And then he's going to use some of my capital to buy resources from this person. And just like the simulation was really cemented all of the vocab. And that was a really great thing to see. Every day there was something a little bit different. It wasn't, today we're going to read this part of the book and then we're going to answer these questions. And then tomorrow we're going to read this part of the book and we're going to answer these questions. It's a different activity with very little prep from us, which I thought was really nice. And they were actually excited about social studies every day because it looked different every day. The activities were collaborative and gave them a lot of opportunities to use that academic language and they did use the academic language without me saying, you need to use the word supplier in a sentence. They actually just used it on their own. And that was really nice to see, a big difference.
I like that you touched on the piece of like them engaging together. Like that really is a big focus of the piloted curriculum, is how do the students engage together to sort things out, to match things, to share their learning, to have academic conversations. It's all about being like peer to peer, which is just so nice to see because they do want to talk. So have them talk about their academic learning, which is just positive.
Yeah. We had an activity as they were learning about entrepreneurs, and it connected well with our CKLA unit on inventors. So that was a great connection to see. And they had to independently research. There was a list of different entrepreneurs that they could research, and they chose one and then grouped together and answered some questions from their learning. But they were so engaged, I had to cut it off. And they were like, no, we want to, and they, they went down the rabbit hole of like, let me learn all I can about John Deere tractors. And it was just great to have, like, just to see them just really engaging in the inquiry. We talk a lot about inquiry models being best practice, but seeing it really in action was really neat to see.
And when I think about like the Danielson framework, right, when we look at that distinguished column, it talks about all of the things that you're talking about, where kids are taking responsibility for their learning and they're generating the conversation. So make sure your principal sees a lesson and remind your principal that's distinguished.
Yeah, just mark that.
Yeah, right there. So every pilot has some challenges. Have you encountered any, and how have you worked through them?
I think For me, the first lesson was pretty clunky. Switching over to this really inquiry model where I'm not the driver of the bus was hard for me. I like to be in control of things. I like to deliver knowledge, and I had to switch out of that. There's an assessment in particular that all of the fourth grade teachers on the pilot team struggled with because but this could be an answer, but this is also the correct answer, but this is also the correct answer. And how do we grade this? And the team at InquirEd was really great. They're like, this is inquiry. Like, those are correct. Your students are showing understanding of the concepts. It doesn't have to be fill in the box with the correct answer in order to show mastery. And so that switch was a little tricky for me to do. But once I was able to kind of make that connection of it doesn't have to look exactly the same for every student to show mastery, was like, okay, now I got this. But it was a little tricky at first.
I would agree too, like not being the main driver of the lesson can be a little bit of a challenge at first, but the students took on the role of a leader quickly, which was good to see because they were so invested in what they're learning about. Trying to set up the digital platform for the students was a little challenging at first, but switching it over to putting resources in Schoology also worked well. So I think both platforms could be an avenue, and once you decide what works best for you, it was an adjustment that was made quickly.
I'm hearing you both talk about that shift in pedagogy and how this looks different than how you've taught before. That had an impact on how you teach other content?
I think like letting the students know I don't have to be the supplier of the answer. They can be the supplier of the answer. Go back and look in your resources or really think about how did you come to this response. It can help drive them. So just kind of pushing them in the other content as well and reminding them of you can also be in charge of your learning and knowing you can go seek that information in different ways. I think they're more open now to go back and find the answer in other spots and to not just stop their learning at one spot, but to keep going, I think also is something that I've noticed since we've started the inquiry piece.
I think something that I've struggled this year within my classroom is, we have a share out about a discussion question and the students turn and talk to me the whole time. And I've all the different ways tried to say, talk to these guys. Like I'm not in fourth grade anymore. Talk to your classmates, turn and talk to them when you're sharing this. And since we've had these really great discussions where they were very engaged, they started to do that. And I'm not reminding them, like, turn and face the class when you're sharing this information. Now they're like, I want to add on to what so-and-so said. And they're like, oh, but I agree with them, but I disagree. And they started debating in other areas within CKLA, within math. They're adding on to each other so much more naturally. It's not me forcing that. It's them they've just made the leap. And that's the only thing I can think of what attributed to it, because I thought of all the different ways to get them to talk to each other. So it was great to see them having discourse.
That's magical, right?
Yeah. It's really nice.
So cool. So the work that you've been doing is grounded in teacher leadership. Why do you think it matters that teachers, and not just those of us in central office, but that teachers are leading the adoption conversations and decisions?
I think sometimes when teachers are told that they need to change things, whether it be curriculum or different assessments, there can be like some resistance. So knowing that it was put in place in a classroom in the district shows that it can be applicable to all the classrooms in the district. So I think that's a good way to see it, is that we've tried it and we've adapted to it and we've been flexible, and that others should come to the space with an open mind to do the same to get the best instruction for their students, rather than just having someone say, oh, we picked this and now you're going to go forth with it.
Good luck.
Yes. We've actually implemented it and our students have used it, and it wasn't just like a let's practice with other teachers. It's been student practice as well, and they've enjoyed it. So I think having the student voice and teacher voice has more, I don't know, how you would
More
say,
buy-in.
more buy-in, yeah. More drive from the classroom rather than the central office.
I think for me, when I'm thinking about a new curriculum or a new instructional strategy or really anything, I usually see it modeled in a perfect classroom where the kids come quietly and sit at the carpet and their hands are folded in their laps and they all raise their hand. And at first, I have a bit of a difficult group this year. It's big and there's a lot of academic need and a lot of behavioral need. And I thought, should I be piloting a social studies curriculum with this big of a task in front of me
Right.
already? And it was good to see how we can use this in a realistic classroom. Like, I have realistic teacher issues and I have students that have realistic needs, and it's not always perfect. So that's what we're all going to experience as we are teaching. So it's good that we're, I think, having that voice of, this did not work because I have 32 kids and it's a little nuts in there and I'm teaching social studies at the end of the day, or this did work and this was a really great lesson that we did. So I think it's just good to hear that voice. I think when we're like in the trenches, I guess, as we say,
Absolutely.
to get that feedback.
Yeah. I say a lot, I could make all kinds of decisions and I could read research and it doesn't matter because what really matters is the work that you're doing, right? I can pick a thing that looks good, but I need teachers to actually implement it and tell me, yeah, this for real is good, or no, it's really only good on paper. I think there's no replacing that knowledge of just day-to-day life in a classroom.
And I
Thank you.
think our students getting to have a voice as well,
Yes.
because they really put a lot of thought into the feedback that they gave, which was really honest feedback. And the feedback says that they enjoyed this much better than the blue book that came up a lot. I like this one much better than the blue book. The blue book was boring. And I mean, I agree. So it's good that they got a voice as well.
I think too, like for 5th grade, we did learn about rights and responsibilities, and we learned that everyone's voice matters. And so them being able to give their voice on what they thought of the
Yes.
curriculum just made it more applicable. And we talked about if you wanted to share your voice, if you felt so strongly about this curriculum, you could go share to the school board and your voice
Yes.
could be heard there too. So knowing everyone can have their voice matter, learning that in our piloted curriculum, and then showing them it can go forth and be applicable right away.
difference.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's a cool lesson too. So how does this curriculum complement our work with JML STI?
I'd love to start off with an example that we had from our rights and responsibility unit that we piloted. We had a lesson in a module that focused on learning about the levels of government. So we started on learning about the federal government, and then that was a whole kind of module. And then the next module was then taking the levels and comparing them. So we compared federal government and state government and local government, and then also tribal government. So it was just a nice way to integrate the tribal piece into this program that we're piloting, and the students made connections to the previous STI curriculum inquiry that we did. They're like, oh, well, we learned about tribal sovereignty before, and now we're having this topic come up again when we're learning about tribal government and how it compares to the other levels of government. So I thought that was great for the students to see and make a connection immediately.
Yeah, similarly, we had just finished up learning about the fur trade, which is really the economic system that was used during that time. And the students were able to really easily go, oh, needs and wants, that's just, the supply and demand. All of these things are what we've talked about, and then they were able to quickly apply those terms from the JMLSTI curriculum into this and see those connections. So it was really good to see. Even in economics, we can make those connections between tribal and local governments.
What about this curriculum, in your experience, supports equitable access to high quality social studies learning for all students?
I think having lots of different ways for students to learn the material. There are different resources, different types of resources. There's a lot of videos, there's printed text, everything was available for my kids to annotate on. So we got to practice that skill, which is so important. All of the different simulations and games really made all of my students feel engaged and able to connect with it. In addition, the assessment isn't just like we've talked about, it's not just fill in the box with the correct word. It's show your understanding. At the end of the unit, there's a project the kids have to do, a product that they create, and every student was able to enjoy that because you can you can use your creativity, and it's not necessarily you have to write this essay that's well formulated and answer these questions. It was just different modalities of showing your understanding.
When I think about the piloted curriculum compared to the old curriculum or the Orange Book curriculum, it is a hardbound textbook with chapters and chapters and chapters to read, and then for you to answer some different questions. And there is no digital components at all. There's no videos, there's no online access with the Orange Book. Compared to the piloted curriculum, there is digital platforms. So if a student is maybe at a lower reading level, they can access this passage on the computer and listen to it aloud from there and still have an engagement with it compared to just having a book in front of you and being asked to read and follow along. There's also videos compared to the Orange Book curriculum has no videos, and there is links for videos in the teacher manual, but they no longer are live links. There's no videos. And the pilot curriculum does allow for students to represent their learning in different ways. It's not just the fill in the blank or multiple choice. There's drawings, there's conversations, there's partner work, which is just a way for more students to access and show their learning compared to just a multiple choice test over and over and over again.
So really UDL is just built right in there, right?
Yeah,
That's exciting.
It's built in there and it's labeled for teachers. So it's not, you can hunt and peck to figure out what exactly am I grading here. It says, or I think they're called quick checks, and it'll say this is a formative assessment that's coming in, here it is. And so you can actually go, oh, hey, I've got an assessment. I don't need to figure out what exactly am I supposed to be grading here. So that was good.
And with the teacher curriculum too, as you're looking on the online platform, it gives you ways to support students who might need extra support. It will give you sentence stems. It will give you ideas on just how to help them access the materials in a way that's more fitting for them. Even the articles that they have to read are not as dry and long as what might be in the Orange Book. They are more applicable to today, and they're just shorter and gain their attention in a stronger way than the Orange Book curriculum. We'll just keep referring to Orange Book. That's what it is. Bright orange book that sits in the room and we use. So
yeah. That I think was adopted in like 2012 or something like that.
Maybe even before that.
Yeah,
I feel like
very, very old.
Yeah, maybe I'll have to check
Very
the date
old.
that's written in the
Yeah,
front
let
of
me
the
know.
book. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Crystal said she remembers teaching with the Big Orange Book many, many, many years ago.
So at this point, the point that we're recording, the school board has not yet approved moving forward with this curriculum. We made a recommendation. We'll go back for a second read in a couple of weeks. But if this curriculum is adopted, what excites you most about launching it district-wide next year?
I just think for the students to have more buy-in and more engagement in their social studies learning and to have more representation and newer, more updated information and content. The articles that some of my students read in this piloted unit were very recent, within the last few years, compared to when we're reading from our curriculum we have right now. We're saying it's from many, many years ago. Like, it's not as applicable to them when they read about stuff that's right now. So just having the students feel more engaged and have a bigger buy-in makes me excited if it is to be adopted.
Oh, I think definitely getting to have a fresh start with social studies. We teach Washington State history, a little snippet. And right now, I think our pacing guide, what we were able to fit in was 3 days, and it's pretty quick. And students don't walk away with a really great understanding of the state that we live in. It looks like the new curriculum, as all of the lessons that I previewed go quite a bit more in depth and give a better full picture of the state we live in. I think that will be really nice to see.
So, what would you say to a teacher who is nervous about inquiry-based social studies?
I'd say have an open mind. I think going into a new curriculum, we want it to fulfill every need that we've ever had. And there are always going to be shortcomings that we as teachers need to use our professional judgment to fill. But I think switching the gears from being the driver is definitely an important thing to think about. The company that we are, the InquirEd company, is really great with answering those questions. And there's a hub that's in the curriculum, in the digital platform, that I found was really very helpful, that you can look at what other teachers around the country are doing who are teaching that same unit. You can look at work samples of other students. So that kind of put me at ease quite a bit as I was looking through and going, oh, okay, my kids don't have to look like a rocket scientist to finish this paragraph. They can really just do a drawing and show their understanding at where they are, and it doesn't have to be this printed perfect product. So don't be nervous.
And I think knowing that it's not going to be solid the first time you look at it,
Right.
but you can always adjust and be flexible. And if you feel like something is missed, you can always go back and touch on it again. I feel like the modules build on each other well. And there's a good progression. So knowing like you're going to give them a more solid foundation just as you continue to go through the lessons. It's not just going to be like, we learn this for one lesson and we're done. Like they're going to build and build and build. And so they'll gain a deeper understanding as they do more of that learning themselves was also like helpful to see. And then knowing that there are teachers who've practiced using the program. So to reach out to them and feel comfortable asking questions and sharing ideas of what's working well and what's not working well. I think it's just a good practice to
Definitely
have.
What's one hope you have for social studies learning in our district over the next, 5 years or so?
I hope that more people enjoy teaching and learning social studies. I mean, even within my own practice, it's the end of the day. And if ELA or math or something that was a struggle, my temptation is to go back and hit that again and, oh, we'll do social studies tomorrow. It's the thing that I just kind of cast aside, and really just understanding that they're getting so much practice. The ELA standards go in, there's so much embedded within social studies work that they need that time, and just making sure that we're committing as teachers to give them the learning time that they need within these subjects.
Kind of going off that, I hope that people see it as not just a box to check, but a way to grow the students into stronger learners and to have more representation. I would like for students to see themselves in the curriculum and see themselves in what they're learning, and for the students to have more buy-in to their learning, which I think this InquirEd curriculum does allow, but just to have a stronger connection to our community with our social studies curriculum. How does it represent this giant district that we're in and not just a small population of our district? And how does it reach all students because it's accessible to everyone and not just accessible to the students who are already at grade level? So I'd like to see social studies be accessible to all and represent everyone.
Good. Well, thank you both so much for being guests on TandL Talks today. And thank you for your leadership. You have spent a long day working with the cadre, and that I know the work happens today, but I also know that the work happened yesterday when you got sub notes ready and got ready last week when you're thinking, oh, I'm going to be out on Wednesday. what do I need to worry about? So I appreciate your leadership. I appreciate you coming to the table and sharing your expertise. And I definitely appreciate you being guests here on TandL Talks.
Thank you.
Thanks for inviting us.
As we wrap up today's episode, I want to return to that update I shared at the beginning. Since this conversation was initially recorded, I am thrilled to let you know that the school board has approved the adoption of InquirEd's Inquiry Journeys, and we are officially moving forward with this curriculum in 4th and 5th grade next year. And that is definitely something worth celebrating. To our social studies adoption team and cadre members, thank you. Thank you for your time, your honesty, your professionalism, and your willingness to do the real work, piloting lessons, reflecting on what worked and what didn't, and keeping student experience at the center of every conversation. This adoption is stronger because of you. And to our school board, thank you for your thoughtful engagement, your questions, and your continued trust in teacher-led processes. Your support makes it possible for this kind of meaningful instructional work to take root and grow. What you heard today is a reminder that great curriculum decisions aren't made in isolation. They're built through collaboration, classroom evidence, and trust in our educators. Lisa and Alyssa, thank you for your leadership, your reflection, and your willingness to bring listeners into the reality of inquiry-based social studies learning. And to our TandLers out there listening, thank you for the work you do every day to create classrooms where students feel engaged, represented, and empowered. Until next time, TandLers, this has been TandL Talks, where teaching and learning come to life.